Yo, everybody, just checking that this is running. Yeah, let's go. So yeah, I think it's all running. It's all looking good. I got a signal. Hey, got a signal. Cool. Let's go. So okay, we have a lecture today. Let's get this started. If I'm going back to so many basic topics, just tell me and I can move on because I have a lot of material. By the way, I put you an assignment for that you should deliver for next week. Let me quickly maybe explain you what it's about before we get anything started, so you have an idea. And maybe if you hate my lecture, you can go and do it right now. Whatever you want, it's up to you. I put you a multi-track for a song there. It's a song that I wrote, actually. It's from my electronic music project. It's very old. And you can only use equalizers, whatever equalizers. I don't care. It can be active, passive, dynamic, the stock EQs from Ableton. I don't care. And only using EQs, you need to make a technical mix for this track. Like, what I mean by technical mix is just like, I mean, that's what I call that's what I call my shitty mix when I send it to clients. This is a technical mix. So, so I mean, it's like your very first attempt to mix something. That's what I mean by technical mix. You need to choose 3 of the channels that you mix. Like, let's say there are beats, electronics, synths, whatever. You will choose 3, and you need to make a screenshot of the EQ that you made, and then you need to write a PDF. And then you need to write a PDF explaining why did you do that. Like, I mean, you take 3 of those screenshots, you put the screenshot, and you write below. This was the, it can be in Russian if you want to do it in Russian, I don't mind, or in English. Like, this was the track called Drums, and I decided to cut 7 kilohertz because I thought it was too harsh on my ears, or whatever. Or maybe you had a plan or something, whatever you want. The point on this exercise, I mean, I know that some of you will do this exercise right. I know that some of you will do this exercise wrong. What I mean by wrong is like your equalizations will suck, maybe. But that's the point. The point is that you go and hit your head, bang your head against a wall, and then we discuss that. Like, that's, and many of you will do it perfectly, and it would be amazing, and I'm sure of that. You guys are awesome. So, but if you feel that you're not ready for this exercise, or you feel that it's like, wow, I don't know how to EQ, that's my point. I just want to show you, like, with an exercise, I want to teach you something. So, and then, well, you need to give me your technical mix created with EQs only in WAV format. So you need to upload the WAVka, and then you need to submit a PDF with a small essay explaining what the hell happened. And I think I'm going to, I mean, I will put another point there. Be alert with that. I think I'll put a 0.7. I was thinking in the metro coming here. I don't want to ask you to upload me your projects, because I'm honest with you, like, downloading for me like 700 projects in my computer, it's gonna destroy my memory. So, but I think I'll ask you to bring it to the class with you, like, somehow, or to put it in your cloud, whatever, and maybe we can do that. Just upload it, but I will not evaluate it. I just want to make sure that we can see it if we want to. Okay, so I hope you enjoy the track. I think some of you may have heard it. It's super old, and anyways, let's go. So, look, I'm preparing myself to open the new material from the book that we are following, because the next material that is coming is really awesome. It's really, really amazing. And but I kind of like have a strategy of opening up that box next week and the week before going to holidays, because the box that we're gonna open is ear training. So, I mean, I know that all of you are going to spend your December holidays just listening to frequencies, obviously, like, and that's what you want to do. That's, I mean, you told to parents, like, hey, I know that you invited me to the Maldives or something, or to Costa Rica, but no, sorry, but I would just have to stay here listening to frequencies. Like, I cannot do that in Costa Rica or in the Maldives. So, anyways, no, I mean, I want to open this topic properly, and I am up to the ass right now, and so I didn't want to open a new topic today, so I took some stuff that I have already prepared from the past, and we're going to discuss something that I think is really important, which is metering. And apart from discussing metering, we're going to discuss dynamic range too. And then we will see where we are at the end of the lecture, and we decide what to do. If any of you feel like dude, like, I really got this very much. Like, please don't make us suffer this 1 hour and a half again of seeing this material. I don't think that I remember what I have taught you, and I know that guys that were with me in the last foundation, I mean, last year, have not seen this material. Guys who were in foundation with me 2 years ago have seen some of this material, because in the past, there didn't used to be the predmet called Audioelektronik i cyfrowy zvuk, so I was teaching a lot of that in foundation, but not anymore. So please just feel free to skip it, because I can also open the project and do your homework and discuss it with you. I think that's a great lecture as well. So I want to discuss a different set of meters. I want to discuss the audio spectrum as well. I want to discuss the waves of manipulating the spectral balance in the DAW, and I want to experiment something with you guys using the equalizers that we have here. So I like this sentence, like the ears are useless when the mind is blind. So, I mean, the point of that sentence is like, if you don't know what you're EQing, or if you don't know what you're doing, it's just useless to do anything. I mean, you're just gonna be just like hitting random buttons and hoping for something cool. And that's kind of how we EQ most of the times, until there is a point when the matrix comes down and you start seeing it and you're like, oh, okay, like this is what I have to do, great. But we need to inform our mind about things. So let's start having a conversation about loudness. Do you, any of you remember this slide? Or, I mean, I'm testing this to make sure that I'm not bothering you with something that you already seen. Yeah? You do? You've seen it? I understand. So let's discuss it once more time from the point of view of развитие технического слуха. Like, what's the difference between loudness and volume? I once won a book by the Bobcats because I answered that question correctly in a seminar of Bobcats. So what's the difference between loudness and volume? I'm gonna troll a little bit here. We already seen it. Okay, what's the no, I'm just trolling here a little bit. What's the difference? So can we say it? Like, can we articulate it? Is he face of Buddha? Okay, great. Loudness is more subjective. You see, songwriter hitting at a home run. Bam, I'm молодец. Songwriting is songwriting. Look at me. Loudness is more subjective. Why? I mean, I follow you there. That's amazing. Things that is what for loud. Okay, but volume is the same. Cool. So can we try to articulate this, like in some form? Like, I mean, you're doing it perfect there. You said perfect. So can we go one step further and try to articulate it? It's a psychoacoustic phenomena, like psychological acoustic phenomena. It's connected with something that happens in the space around you, and it also happens in your head. So that's really loud. Can you turn the volume down? It's a conversation about loudness versus volume, because loudness occurs in the human perception level, and volume occurs in the physical measurement of things or equipment. I, of course, know that. I mean, when I repeat a material, if I ever I try to not repeat a material, but if I repeat a material, because I don't like to repeat anything, but if I repeat a material, it's because I feel that we have advanced so much in some other concepts. Like, we have spent some 10 lectures discussing equalization, and you know a lot more now. And when you see something again after you know more, I think that you can get it even deeper. What that means, it's how important it is. So, but always feel free to tell me, dude, like, this is terrible. Anyways, please, because sometimes I feel a bit insecure because I want everything to be cool. So when we're talking about loudness, we're talking about human perception, we're talking about volume, we're talking about gear. So it's like loudness is a people thing, volume is a gear thing. So I'm gonna skip a little bit here. So we all remember what a decibel is. We discussed it so well, and I'm not gonna go through there again. The refresher is here if anybody needs a refresher. So let's see. If I say, I mean, before, let's see if we need a refresher or not. Like, if I say minus 17 dB FS, what am I saying? That's kind of one of my goals today of this lecture, kind of like, let's really hold that. And I know who knows this. I'm gonna grab somebody else, like, just out of context. You are in my eyesight, so sorry for that. What does it mean minus 17 dB FS? Like, if you see that number, does it mean that it's very cold outside, or does it mean that it's very hot, or does it mean that it's loud, or does it mean that it's not loud, or I cannot tell if it's loud or not? Uh-huh. Okay, what does it mean? I mean, what's the if I'm in a computer, what's the maximum volume I can have? What's the maximum like? Yeah, I that's the correct word. Volume I can have. What's the maximum number of volume that I can have? Is it 100? Is it 1,000? And what's the measurement unit? It's decibels. I'm asking kind of there because I know you guys know the answer, and that's really cool. Maybe. I'm asking more like this like row here of friends that are arriving to the technical details, and also online if anybody wants to answer that question. What's the maximum number? I'm looking at my DAW, and it's like, I want this volume to be maximum. What number should I put? 1,000? 1 million? We don't need a refresher. Zero, of course, it's zero. It's zero. Like the maximum number, and I really don't mean to single you out there. It's just like, this lecture is technical. You ladies are more on the songwriting side, and I want to help you to understand these things too. So, huh? Why what? Well, I mean, 1, 2, 3. I mean, there are the majority in this table are on the songwriting side. There are two that not, but the majority are. So I don't mean to single you out. It's just like this class is for everybody, and I just want to kind of bring the level for everybody again. So now let's go back to this question to you, Nick. So if I say what's the maximum level of the DAW that the DAW can have, what's the answer to that? I just said it. It's zero. Why? What is the meaning of that zero? If you don't know, it's cool. You don't need to know this. It's fine. Well, you do need to know. You use the word loudness. Like, you see, yeah, and that's cool. That's what we want to clear here, you know, volume. Like the level of volume. Sorry? What do you mean by natural volume? Okay. I see. Okay, so what you're trying to say there, it's like, well, I don't know what you're trying to say. I'm trying to interpret the commentary. So the commentary is something kind of like zero in the computer means that that's how that signal it is. I'm not like kind of turning it down or something. Like, it's just how it is, you know. So basically in the digital world, I think that it's worth to make a little review of the types of DVs that we have. And maybe you can help me, Sebastian. Like, can you tell me what DVs do you know? Like, yeah, I know. But can you talk so people here online? No, all of the types of DVs that you know, all of them. Like, there is not only DVFS, there is more.
DBU, DBFS.
And what does it mean, DBU? Is like whatever is loudness to you?
No, it's loudness in the analog gear mainly because it's voltage.
Okay. Cool.
There is also DB SPL.
Yes.
I can't really remember what's that.
It's like super powerful Leo. No, sorry. I mean, I'm very, very bad jokes today. It's sound pressure level.
We need some drums.
Yeah, yeah, we need to
And also there is DBV.
or super powerful loudness. That makes more sense. The joke I just made. Like, I mean, if you remove the word
Yeah, I get it, yeah. And also there is DBV.
loud. Huh?
DBV.
DVV. So, okay, you mentioned a whole bunch of DVs. So, Nasser, do you have any idea what the hell is that? Like a DVV or DVU or... Yeah. And so, I mean, I'm interested as well. I don't know, not only Nasser, but for example, do you have an idea, Bratan? Do you have an idea, Bratan, what is like DVV or DVU or... You're reading. Okay, can you try to have an idea? Or Murat also, do you understand this? Like, do you know what it means, like DVV or DVU? You have any ideas? If you read it, yes. Okay, cool. And online, guys, how are you feeling about this question? I see some hands. We're going to discuss this quickly. I know that we have seen it already, but we're going to refresh it. Grisha, tell me, Bratan. Yes.
Are we talking that it's like the same metric, but with different starting points?
It's something like that. You're getting close there, yes. And now we're going to talk exactly about that. So let's 1 second discuss, just for a moment. You know, there is this really cool thing in music, which is like nothing in music is isolated. from each other. Like, what is one note without an interval? It's nothing. I love this concept, and I'm really thinking about this so much now that I'm thinking about tonality a lot. It's like, I'm going to play you a La. What is the feeling of the La? Nothing, no feeling. You need another note in order for it to have a feeling. And so the same, you can think that the same is happening with the concept of volume and loudness, you know. That's very loud. What do you mean it's very loud? It's very loud compared to what? Compared to something. Okay, so that compared to something is what creates all these whole ranges of dBs, of different calculations. Because a dB is just telling you this thing is X amount of times louder than something. That's exactly what a dB is telling you. Like, the thing is that the dB is in a logarithmic scale, and the logarithmic scale is not like our brains do not think in the logarithmic scale, and that's why for us that number, like 60, doesn't mean like so much. We don't feel it, we don't understand it, minus 60. And we will see a table today, because I have given you, to any of you who have seen parts of this presentation, you have seen like the basic version, and then there is like a pro version that you need to pay a subscription for, and then you can see the pro version. No, I mean, there is a version that I augmented for the engineers, and you will see a new table here that I have never showed you before. But before we see that table, let's have a conversation quickly about how the decibel is built. So, I mentioned to you in the past, when we saw this together, that the quietest sound that a person can hear is the flapping of a mosquito wing. That's really cool. So when you say that something is X decibels, you're saying like this thing is like 10 trillion times more energetic. Literally, that number that I'm telling you is real. Like, this thing is 10 trillion times more energetic than the flapping of a mosquito wing. Why do I say 10 trillion times? Because we're thinking in logarithmic scale. And so I remind you that there is a little secret 10 here. So 10 to the power of 1 is 10. 10 to the power of 2 is 100. So when I'm saying that a decibel is 2, I mean, just so you feel this idea, when I'm saying that a decibel is 2, I'm kind of saying this is, but please, this is very rough version of what I'm telling you, okay? It's not exactly like that, but it's the best way I can imagine that you understand it. When I'm saying that a decibel is 2, I'm kind of saying this is 100 times more energetic than a reference value. What's that reference value? We will talk about that in a minute. So let's think about the case of a flapping of a mosquito wing. If I say this is 2 decibels, I'm saying like, this is 100 times more audio energy than if I would be listening to a flapping of a mosquito wing. And that's why I told you, in music, everything is about 2 values, right? A note is nothing isolated from each other. One sound is nothing if you don't have a comparison value. So louder than 1, than a mosquito wing. So if I'm telling you 3, I'm saying it's 1,000 times more energetic. If I'm telling you 60, I'm saying like 10 trillion times more energetic. Because think about it, like, because of the logarithmic scale. I see your face there, and it's just because of the logarithmic scale. If you don't understand the logarithmic scale, there is like, do you know when I have like, how do you say in Russian, like to the power of? No, I know. You know it. Everybody knows it. Don't need to talk about this. Yeah? Sure. Great. So again, if I'm saying, imagine if I'm just saying 4, I'm saying 10,000 times more energetic. Just by saying 4. So 4 dBs is kind of like you're reducing the intensity of something by 10,000 times. Now, then think about it. It really makes sense. Like, you have a mosquito versus an airplane, you know. Like, how many more times louder an airplane is? Like 10 trillion times, for sure. That would be the number. So, great. And our hearing range, and one of the reasons, I mentioned this when we saw this lecture in the past, you know, one of the reasons that we use the logarithmic scale is because our hearing range is 10 trillion to 1. So that's really remarkable. It's like, what is the meaning of that 10 trillion to 1? It means that we can hear things that have a value of 1 and a value of 10 trillion. So our diapason of listening is gigantic. And the reason why we use the logarithmic scale to describe it is because imagine that I would tell you something like, can you please reduce this from 10,777 to 10,500,000? And you're like, what the hell does that mean? Like, I just don't get it. I don't feel it. It doesn't make compute for me. So our first point of reference is, we can call it dB mosquito wing. We can call it like that in between us, you know. dB mosquito wing. What is the meaning of dB mosquito wing? That we are using, this is kind of like you were getting there when you started talking about this, and you know it, you feel it. You were talking about the different reference and values, and I'm sure that you know this as well, and I'm sure that many of you know this already. So the first dB that we have created is, we can call it dB mosquito wing. But then there are whole different worlds when I can live in. Because what do I mean by worlds that I can live in? Well, here we are in space, in acoustic space, and a mosquito wing a mosquito moves their wings and generates a vibration in the air that I can perceive. But what about if I am a virtual entity that lives inside a audio console? You know, I don't experience air there. So it is useless for me to talk about the dB mosquito wing if I live inside a console. Do you understand that? Does it make sense? So I need to now create a new dB in order for me to talk about what's happening inside the console. We have not arrived to that zero that we're not talking about that zero yet. Because in the digital world, everything is upside down from the analog world. Like that zero that you're seeing in your DAW, it's the opposite of what you're seeing in a console. And I will explain you what I mean by that in a second. So let me see, where else can I move here that could be interesting for us now that we have a bit of a better language for this. By the way, this is the actual value of the smallest sound that we can hear. It's 20 to the power of 20 multiplied by 10 to the power of minus 6 pascals. That's the energy of a flapping of a mosquito wings. That's very little. And so in order for us to have any meaningful conversation about volume and loudness or metering, we first need to kind of review the decibel. So I'm just trying to organize my thoughts here and thinking how am I going to approach this. I want to talk about dBFS, which is what's happening in the computer. But before I talk about that, I think I'm going to go through a couple of these dBs and make you understand and feel this thing of like the different reference points. So you got it about the mosquito wing. That's great. Let's see dBm. So what's happening about dBm? Like if you are inside a console, for example, for you, the measurement of comparing against a flapping of a mosquito wing becomes irrelevant. But you could make a reference which is like, how many voltage I need to reproduce the sound of a mosquito wing? And it's like, well, that voltage is, let's say, 1 millivolt. So now my dB is going to be how much, like if I say the number 60, I'm saying I have 10 trillion times more energy than 1 millivolt. Why do I care about the 1 millivolt number? Because it's the smallest unit of energy that the audio equipment can handle. So you start feeling this. So what kind of decibels there are? There is a dB SPL, which measures vibrations in air. Cool. Then there is a dBm, which is like a dB that is based or designed to calculate for me what's happening inside a console. And then, because consoles and audio equipment are different, and also because audio equipment gets connected with each other, you know, it's not in isolation. You have like a console that connects with an EQ, that connects with a compressor, that connects with a whatever, with whatever you want, a tape machine. So all of these things operate at different levels. So maybe I'm going to need more than 1 dB because it's a mess, you know, because it cannot be simple. So there is a dB that is based on a millivolt. There is a dB that is based on 0.774 volts, literally. That number that I just told you is exactly like that, like 0.774 volts. And then there is a dBV, which is like uses 1 volt as reference. And why is that? It's because our digital world is very new, and it didn't used to be like that before. And this thing carried on all the way till now. So we have different reference scales, and that's pretty cool, and that's why we have different types of dBs. Now, there is something called DIN scale. I'm not going to talk about it. The dB that you work the most is called dBFS. So, Mr. and Mrs., we don't need any recap. What does the FS means? Yeah, you got it. You don't need a recap. You should give the lecture. No, I'm kidding. So FS, did we knew this, everybody? Like full scale, we feel it? So what does it mean? I mean, I'm not asking it, I'm kind of saying it. What does it mean full scale? It's like, now we go back to your 0. It's like the dB, when I'm telling you that thing is 10 decibels, what I'm telling you is like that thing is 10,000 times more energetic than, or whatever, 10 million times more energetic than a flapping of a mosquito wing, or 10 million times more energetic than 1 volt, or 10 million times more energetic than 0.774 volts, depending on what the system needs to work on. When I'm in a computer, I'm not telling you that. Because you see, your computer is telling you minus 18. So what the hell is that, minus 18? Like, what does it mean? So the computer flips it upside down, because the limit of the computer is how much computer code I need, or how much computer code I have available in order to describe something. The best metaphor I have for understanding the DB full scale is a tweet. Like when you write a tweet, you know, you have like 268 characters. So let's say, or 200 whatever characters, 252, or I don't remember. So let's say that you run over 250 characters. Then the counter starts becoming minus. Kind of like you have minus 200 characters because you still, well, sorry, I kind of like said it exactly the opposite way. While you are writing the tweet, it shows you the available amount of characters that you have still to go. And then when you reach to 0, it tells you, oh, sorry, I cannot receive more text. So that's what that 0 means. It's like you start adding audio information, and above 0, the system is like, I cannot process this. It's going to become something that is distorted. And why is that? Well, because the system has only enough code to code the information that you have there. So this is how digital clipping looks. Like, I just start coding something, and then I'm like, sorry, I ran out of space. So it's kind of like you start saying, oh, I'm so happy that yesterday Morocco defeated Spain in the World Cup. That's so great. And then you want to write more, and then the system just cuts it. And it's just like your tweet ends there. So you wanted your guitar to be super loud or super energetic, because we want to use the correct terminology there. And then the system just arrives to 0, and it's like, I don't have enough computer code to continue. Sorry. Like, and I'm going to just literally decide for you, the system says, I'm literally going to decide for you, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to destroy that waveform, and then I'm just going to cap it, and that's it. So the level of 0 dBFS is assigned to the maximum possible digital level. For example, a signal that reaches 50% of the maximum level has -6, and that's really counterintuitive for us, but it's because of the logarithmic scale again. Like, it's not like 50, -50 is half because the total is 100. It couldn't be so easy because of mathematics. So let me see. Well, we are going to talk today a little bit about RMS and peak, because we needed to discuss this before we carry on. So I feel that about what I wanted to talk about decibel, that's kind of it. Like, if you want to go deeper into this, open up the slides, go and read a little bit about these things. And I'm going to definitely put you a book, I guess, like that discusses these topics really basically if you want to go deeper. It's really fascinating topic. I'm really honest with you. I really like it. But so now you are going to see me from now on, kind of like we're approaching, I mean, the way I see it is like when we come back from the January break, and then the mixing and mastering course starts in parallel with this one. So this course is going to start changing a little bit, and it's going to start changing towards being a complement to the mixing and mastering course. So in here we will do all the boring stuff, and in the mixing and mastering course we'll do all the fun stuff. For those of you who don't like to mix, I guess that everything is boring, but you have no choice. You're fucked. But you will start seeing me aiming always toward a certain value. And that's the key thing of my work. I mean, that there is a number that I'm always looking for, and I'll explain you what that means in a moment, but we needed to understand dBs in a second, and this is what this is about. When you're recording something, you aim for a specific value. And usually, that value, when you're recording something, is around -12 dBFS. So those of you who are using the studio already, or who are going to start using the studio already, that means that if you're going to open your Ableton and you're going to record anything, Ableton, if you're going to open your Ableton and you're going to record anything, let's have a listen, let's have a look at where that dB level is, just like, so here is audio, sorry, let me just get it from here. And I guess that this thing is disconnected. Just a moment. Input, universal audio. Great. Hey, here I am. Okay. So right now, can somebody help me to I guess anybody, doesn't matter who. Can somebody help me to measure this? What is that? Like, what is that number? Yeah, sure. Sure. Let me just put it like this and like this, I guess. Can I make this meters louder? Yeah. Okay. Bigger. So what value is that? Hey. So you're seeing two values there, right? let's let's try. Let's continue with our. I mean, there are. Let's try to grab Beta here for a second. Can I grab your attention for a second? Can you tell me what's the value of my voice right now? Like, what's the level? Like, I know this is very obvious. I just want to see what do you tell me when I say that. Like, I'm gonna sing a little bit, for example. Ooh, minus 24. Okay. And notice something. Notice something that there is a second measurement, right? Okay. So, and notice something, and this is kind of what this lecture is about. I mean, this lecture is about learning how to meter. Like, that's what this lecture is about. Now, notice something. There is a very big difference, and this is really cool. There is a very big difference when I'm talking. Look at this gap in between these two things. Hey, hey. And when I sing, ooh, that difference becomes very small because the content of the sound that I'm producing has no transient element. And the reason why is because the meter is showing you two readings at the same time. Those readings, I guess that you know them. You guys for sure know them, and you will say them in a second. Do you remember which are those? It rings a bell. Okay. Let's help them. Like, what are those two measurements? Peak and RMS. Okay, so this thing at the same time is showing me peak and RMS. We are going to talk about what that means in a second. I have a really killer slide that is going to make you understand it forever. So let's see. This is something that I was telling you that it's more like about a bit more advanced thinking about dB. Okay, like how do you interpret dBs? Before we carry on to peak and RMS, I want to tell you a bit about how do you interpret dBs. So we're back to the rule of thumb. 10 dB is a kind of like a power ratio of 10. So when power is increased tenfold, it's increased by 10 dB. It's a good way to see it. Like 10 dBs, I mean, it means like, imagine, I have one ice cream. I'm going to increase the dBs on the ice cream levels by 10. You know, now I have 10 ice creams. Like, that's a little bit of a rule of kind of like thumb to organize your head around this. So a 200 watt power amplifier will put out 10 dBs more electrical powers than a 20 watt amplifier. So you see, like, I have 10 times more electrical power, so the whole thing is going to kind of give me 10 dBs more. This depends on a million factors, but it's a good orientation. You can also see dBs in terms of percentages. You see, like, but a percentage is nothing without a reference, so we need to have a reference. So 1 decibel, this is a really cool idea for you. Like, imagine that you have a guitar amplifier and you turn it up 1 decibel. Now the guitar amplifier is operating at kind of 27% more energy than before. Maybe this number doesn't mean anything to you. I don't know if they help you or something, but 3 dB is a power change of 100%. So actually, yeah, and that I'm sure that none of you had, or maybe some of you that are more technically oriented had this clear in your head, but I'm sure that this is something that you never thought of before, and that also when you see it, it's kind of like, wow, 3 dB, if I was operating at 20 watts, and I increase something by 3 dB, now I'm operating at 40 watts. Yeah, because of the logarithmic scale. It's just that those little numbers on the dBs pack a lot of stuff because of the logarithmic scale. Because of the logarithmic scale. Exactly, because it's kind of like, yeah, and we go like 1, 2, 3, and our heads is really like linear, but that's not how it works in the logarithmic world. I have this table here, which is like, okay, you reduced 1 dB do you reduce 1 dB on a system? You know, what's the percentage of power reduction? So kind of like 1 dB is to 27% power, 3 dB is 49% power, blah, blah, blah. The human ear response to sound level is roughly logarithmic. So, and the dB scale reflects that fact. Sorry, an increase of 3 dB doubles the sound intensity. Intensity, not the same as power or energy, by 10 decibels. So, but a 10 dB increase, you see, like, if you increase something 3 dBs, you double its intensity. And here we go back to the loudness versus volume conversation. But in order for it to be perceived twice as loud, you need to increase it 10 dB. Because power is not the same as what the human is experiencing. And actually, this is really interesting. For example, if I have, imagine, this is really fucking crazy. It's just like sound is really fucking crazy in general. Like the whole thing of sound is really like, what? Like, are you really serious, God? Like, really? Or whatever, universe, are you really gonna do that? Like, if you put, like, for example, imagine that I have a speaker playing at 10 decibels and I put a second speaker playing at 10 decibels, you don't experience 20 decibels now. They just don't sound like that at all. And if you add a third, fourth, fifth speaker, that's why when you go to a live show, there are not like 10 million speakers, so it sounds louder. It's just kind of more about directionality and the power of each speaker and everything, but that's a long conversation. So, okay, so now, this is my favorite meter, actually, and I wish, I mean, as soon as the next bull market comes in, bull market is in, like, you know, in financials, you know, there's the moments when the market is going up and the moments when the market is going down. The bull market is the moment when the market is going up. So when Bitcoin goes up again in value, I will definitely buy this meter. I just have never bought it again because I feel it's painful. I mean, I had it when I was living in Budapest because in the studio they had it there. And I never have had it back because I always felt like a bit painful to spend 150 euros to get a meter, you know. But it's amazing meter. It's just fucking wonderful. It carries, it's like a multimedia meter, it's called like that. And it just packs in you a lot of information there. So what do I have here? Oh, look, I have a VU. VU stands for volume unit. So VU, it's an old way of representing electrical energy and volume and loudness together in one signal unit. I also have another type of meter here, which is telling me the peak of the signal. It's telling me the RMS of the signal. We're going to talk about that in a second. And it's showing me also the LUFS. We're going to talk about that as well, what that means. And it's showing me the dynamic range. We're going to talk about that as well, what that means. And that means this, and also it has a kiniometer, which is showing me a stereo spread, which is really great. And I mean, if it were for me, I would have this meter almost in every channel and always look at it all the time, because doing the stuff that I do is 90% about metering, like, or not 90%, but I would say 50% is about metering, and the other 50% is about, I would say, like, if you're like Leo, mix a song, like, what's the percentage of time of attention that you pay to things? And I would say something kind of like 40% is metering, 40% is EQing, and 20% is all the rest, compression and effects. So it's really like 40% of my time is just like looking at meters and like, and then thinking like, will this be too intense later? Like, that's the whole game. It's like, okay, I have this, I'm in the stage of my mix, you know, which is like whatever stage. I'm in the day 2 and I'm just like kind of EQing something and looking at the meter and I'm thinking, when I add a compressor later, will this become too energetic and then it's going to clip? And that's the whole game, you know. And for this, you need to be really good at metering. You need to be really good at looking at a meter and know what the hell it's telling you, and also knowing which meter you need in any moment, because in the end, you can meter in very different ways the same signal. So let me just skip this. This is an important slide for us. So when we're talking about peak and RMS, we're talking, this is a perfect demonstration of what we're talking about. So, I mean, the RMS value is trying to describe me all this thing. And the peak value is just trying to tell me that. Like, it's just trying to tell me how high this waveform went. And the RMS value is trying to describe to me the whole area of this waveform. And sort of like explaining to me its long, I don't know, it's projection over time. And you see, like, a peak value just tells me something in an instant. And that's a really important thing. It's like, I have this metaphor, which is, you have a race, people are running, you know, and you are going to either take a photo or film a video of the end. You know, what do you want to do? Why would you like to only take a photo if you can take both? You want to take both, because maybe the ending of the race is so tight that you need to see, like, oh, he won. Like, for this, I need a photo. So a peak image of or a peak measurement of a waveform is like a photo of it. And an RMS waveform, an RMS measurement of a waveform is like a little loop, like a whatever, I don't know, like a short video, very short video. Something like that. I mean, just so I can see, like, oh, look how it's developing over time, you know. So, yeah, I think that we don't need to go through these. Let me just read for 1 second here, like a couple of things that I have here. The root mean square means the average voltage level of electrical signals. That's all. That's actually all. It's like, imagine this. This is a great way to feel peak versus RMS. If I measure the height of all of us in this room here, and then we're gonna see like, okay, Leo was 185, Murat, how tall are you? 191. So, like, I think that out of all of us, Murat will be the peak level of all of us because he's taller. But if we want to describe what's the average height of the room, you know, it's going to turn out to be 170 or something. You see? And why do you care about that? Well, maybe you're building a door, and then you kind of like want to know who is the tallest person in the room so that he doesn't hit his head against the wall, against the door. And you can think about that door being your limiter, you know. Literally, it's like, okay, let's build some acoustic structure so the tallest signal of them all, which would be a peak level signal, doesn't stumbles upon it. So the root mean squares is, and actually the root mean square is something that you use that mathematical formula. You use it in statistics, you use it in medicine, you use it like everywhere. This like root mean square is nothing connected with audio. It's just a statistical principle. You know, I can make a root mean square of the amount of bank transactions made by Sberbank on a Thursday evening. You know, like it doesn't matter. It's just like we apply it to sound too. And then on peak, let's see what it says here. So we could grab it strongly, like type of visual measurement instrument that indicates the instantaneous level of an audio signal that is passing through the system. So photo versus video. Nothing new there. So let's discuss 1 second. When we were talking about meters up here, I showed you a whole bunch of meters. So let's quickly run through each one of these. So there is something called a VU meter, which is the guy that you see here, and you have seen it in many places. Now, let's see, super technical guys here, if you can help me with something. I see a 0, and then I see like more than 0. What does that mean? This is not in the computer. This is in my Neve that I have at home. I have a VU meter. So, but that VU meter goes above 0. What the hell does that above 0 means? Don't read it. I'll go away. What does it mean? Because it says it there, really. It's not. This is not in the DBFS at all. This is super before DBFS was invented, that this thing came out. So, so we don't suffer there unnecessarily. I'm just kind of like being a major asshole to you to prove you that this recap was super necessary, so I can sleep well tonight. So basically what's happening here is that when you have, again, now we all know that we need a reference value in order to build a DV. And so that's really cool. And the other thing that you need to know is that this is becoming more foreign to all of you, but in the past, humans used to connect a lot of equipment together. So it's like, let's say that you have this system which can produce a lot of electrical power, like a very heavy electrical output, and you want to connect it to another system that can, that maybe, let me put it in other words here. I have a cool metaphor here to tell you. Imagine that I buy a Zhiguli, and I put in the Zhiguli the engine of a, I don't know, of a hypercar, of a Ferrari, you know. And maybe as soon as I hit this accelerator the first time, I'm gonna destroy the Zhiguli because the Zhiguli was not ready to hold this power, you know. So more expensive equipment can produce more power output. It's more amazing. It's more cool. And if you connect a very powerful equipment with an equipment that is not ready to handle that amount of energy, then you're gonna fry the second equipment in your line. So in the past, this used to be more important than now, because nowadays maybe you guys don't connect equipment together, but in the past, everything was about connecting equipment. So the VU tells me this, like zero VU. I'm not gonna go through this technicality. It's really annoying, but I'll explain you in another moment what that means. 0 VU means plus 4 dBu. You remember there are different types of dBs, and they are convertible within each other. So 1 dBV is like 5 dBm, because you're just changing the reference value. So 0 dBu is the same as 4 dBu. 0 VU, sorry, is equal as 4 dBu. Does that make sense to you? I mean, there is a math. We could see that math, but we're not going to. But the most important part of that means is that 0 BU means that the output of your apparatus, of your device, is 1.228 volts. And so whenever that thing is in 0, if you put your tongue and touch the cable that is coming out of this thing, your body is going to receive 1.228 volts. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be tasty. Now, the reason why this guy goes above 0, it's not connected to DBUs or, sorry, to DBFS or computers or something, is because now your power output is a little bit more than 1.228 volts. And so if you put your tongue there, you're going to receive more than 1.228 volts. And why do you care? Because there is another equipment connected next to it. So you don't want to fry anything. Now, the reason why they let you go above 0 is because maybe the next equipment can handle that power, and it's okay. But they're just warning you, like, listen, user, right now the power output of the system is bigger than 1.228 volts. Do whatever you want with that. And you're like, I don't know, I want to saturate this on a tape machine. The tape machine can handle it. Yes, great, awesome. And then I can use it. So, like, that's about 2.5 milliwatts when applied, but yeah, that's very technical. So 0 BU is usually referred as 0 dB. So now in the, you see, like, this is kind of like a first version of the DBFS. It's sort of like the first version of the VFS, because when you see a VU, you are operating in the minus territory again, because you're kind of like telling, your system is telling you, listen, the output of this, the power output of this thing is less than 1.228 volts. So do whatever you want with that, understand it, and whatever. So that's about the VU. There are peak meters, obviously, and of course, let me tell you another important thing. This guy, it's really great because of the way it works, the ballistics of the meter, and we're going to talk about that word in a second. Because of the ballistics of the meter, this guy is really good to represent to you RMS. So VU meters display RMS levels. So when you're looking at that thing, you're kind of like getting an average of the voltage. You're not getting a peak measurement at all because it's not fast enough to represent that for you. So whenever you see some I don't know what to say, like some crappy engineer kind of like trying to measure like a snare with this thing, this person doesn't know what they're doing and they're totally out of order. Like, and that's something that you need to know now. Like, you can see like, hey, you're measuring this, and you can be an asshole. Like, you're measuring a snare with a VU meter, and they usually display RMS levels. So it was designed to be a loudness meter, the VU, and that's how it is. I have a saying, which is that you can, and I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, and you have heard me say it already, I don't know, but you can measure the level of success in life depending on how many VU meters you have. So if you have a console, you know, you have 36 VU meters, you know, and then you're a very successful person. I have 2 VU meters, so I'm kind of like closely getting there. Of course, there are peak meters that just look at peaks, you know, and they're just kind of looking at the little photograph and just like trying to tell you how loud it was, like, or well, how energetic it was in a certain moment. And also, I mean, this particular peak meter, it also goes above 1, because look now you can start seeing these things and see like, okay, what is the meaning of this? Look, 0 dB reference, 2 plus 6 dB, 3 plus 12 dB, 4 plus 12 dB. So when you're above it, yeah, you see, like he's telling you, when you're above 0, when you're at 1, let me try to understand this. Stereo peak and phase meter. Okay, I have a phase correlation. That's cool. And then I have a 0, which will mean that the output of the system is X amount of voltage. And I guess that he's trying to tell me, like, if I am in 2, I'm in plus 6 decibels. But I don't know, what I don't understand is it like 1, 0. Yeah, no, I don't know. I'm going to get lost there. So, and this is a 1 RU system. To be honest with you, I don't know what that means. PPM, RU. PPM or what? I have never noticed this photo with attention, so that's why I'm not prepared to discuss it, but I don't know exactly how to interpret this meter. I would have to read. But a peak meter usually indicates the instantaneous levels of audio signal. I think that this is clear. Peak reading meter measures the peak value of a waveform. I think that's clear. Measure high value person helps assure the signal being recorded is not clipping or distorting the medium. Great, and peak meters respond to a signal entertainment and catch all the fast transits. Nothing new there. So back here. So which one is peak and which one is RMS? We have discussed this a million times. I'm not going to bother you with that. The RMS is the lower one and the peak is the higher one. So you need to be watching them both always. That's why they put them both there. It's not to save economy or something. It's just like they put them both there because you need to be watching them both all the time. Like, and I will show you a case, a really good case in a slide that is coming ahead. So digital meters are also or usually awesome. They operate in DVFS. So let me just see these analog meters measure levels from the noise floor up. That's digital meters measure levels from the clipping point down. Like that's what I told you when I said that like analog meters and digital meters are kind of like inverted images of each other. So analog meters look at the whole thing from the bottom up, and digital meters look at everything from the top down. That's why we have a minus there. FS is for full scale, meaning that the signal contains the maximum amount of digital information that can be introduced into the digital system without overloading. So 0 dBFS is the highest possible digital audio your system can handle without causing clipping. Clear. So this is what I asked before, and this is a really important for me that you feel this. What does 0 means in the console? 0 means that the cables coming out of the output equipment are carrying 1.228 volts. That's what 0 means in a console. Most pro audio gear can handle this level of current, but so can't. So 0 is used as a reference that goes like, hey, you may damage the equipment that's next in the chain. Analog audio and digital gets, and also there is this situation which is like not most, I mean, all studios connect analog audio, which works in DVFS, with digital, analog audio, which work with DBU, DBB, DBM, whatever, and you connect this to a thing that it's working on DBFS. And I know that maybe this is a question that you have never faced, but I'm telling you that depending on, like all sound cards have like an option to choose like in which dB are you going to be measuring the input from, and depending on which choice you choose there, you're going to get a very total resource, because that's what is called the calibration of the audio equipment. I mean, what I'm trying to tell you is like you are connecting a preamp with a, let's say, with a sound card, and then the preamp is telling you, for me, 0 dBs means 1.228 volts. And then the sound card, it's like, for me, 0 dBs, and because I'm thinking in another type of dBs, your audio equipment is dBV, and your sound card is thinking in dBu. So for me, 0 dBs means 0.77 volts. You see? And then you have your sound card going at 0 dB, your preamp going at 0 dB, sending something to your sound card that your sound card is thinking, it's expecting it to be 0.77 volts, but what's coming out is actually 1.28. And then you have a mismatch between what the analog gear is doing and the digital gear is doing. I think I got myself a bit complicated. Did you understand what I meant there? So there needs to be a matching of the type of dBs that you are working on in between your analog equipment and your digital equipment, because if not, it's kind of like I speak in Spanish and you guys are listening in Russian. And it's like, what the hell is going on? I don't understand anything. So, hey, you may damage the equipment that is next to the change. When analog audio and digital gear started working together, then this 0 also means you may click the analog to digital conversion that will happen after this gear. So be careful. What does 0 means in the computer? Well, I said it so clearly, I'm not going to read this. It means we ran out of code to describe the signal. Sorry. So I'm going to chop it down. Your tweet, you cannot tweet anymore any further. So by the way, all of this stuff is going to be in a quiz. So that's also why I'm starting with a recap. There will be a quiz next year about this. So ballistics. So do you have any idea what ballistics means? It's not about weapons or bullets or something. I know it sounds like that, but so ballistic is the speed in which a meter can react. So, I mean, you see, like, sometimes you're listening, if you have ever used an analog VU meter, you see, like, and you even can hear them, like, how they are, like, moving so fast, like, these needles. However, the ballistics of a VU meter is so slow that it's not reproducing you a peak signal. That's why a VU meter will never be used to measure a peak signal. The ballistic is the speed at which a meter can react. So each meter has a type of ballistics. So it means that how fast they react will be meaningful to you. Because, I mean, let's say that right now I make this infinitely fast transient that will make us all deaf, sorry, temporarily, let's put it like that, will make us deaf for 10 seconds, you know. But the transient was so fast that no audio meter could catch it. And then you will not have evidence to show to the police that I just made you deaf for a couple of minutes, you know, because the system did not have the speed to measure that. And so, yeah, depending on the ballistics of the meter is going to be more appropriate or inadequate to measure something. So the point of this slide is like kind of, this is what I was telling you about the photo finish. Like you need both VU and RMS, you know, sorry, peak and RMS. And this is an example. This is a great example. Maybe you grab a snare. Let's say that you're the kind of guy or gal who is trying to decide, like, I'm going to mix kind of like with my, I mean, a bit more with my eyes and just trust the measurement of the system, and I'm just going to make decision based on the measurement of the system. And you're saying, and this happens a lot, man. I meet a lot, you know, sometimes I give like some talks outside of MMS, like in some like a trade show or something. Remember, I was invited you to one of those, like that I was in, and I meet a lot of like, I don't know how to call this, like sound gorillas, let's call it like that. You know, I don't know, I'm saying like people who think they know a lot about sound, but that they don't. And so it's like, I heard that all snares should be at -8 dB, and it's like, what? First of all, what? Second of all, what are you talking about? Are you talking about RMS or peak? I don't know what you're talking about, really. Because you see, maybe you have a snare and you're measuring at the peak, and you see, oh man, that's like a peak is -8 dB. That's a nice level. I decided that that's a nice level. I have this guy who told me on YouTube that all the snares should be at -8. But then you measure it in RMS. I always in this, I think that it's like snare 1 peaks at -8, snare 2 sounds louder. Yeah, you see, like, sorry, I got my head around this. You had a snare 1 and it peaks at -8, and you have a snare 2 that it sounds louder, but it also peaks at -8. So it's like, what happened there? By the way, what happened there? I will show you an example of that in a moment in the computer. Can you imagine why that happened? Imagine that you have two snares, one of them sounds louder than the other, but both of them show you a peak level of -8. Just a sec. What did you want to say? Just a sec. The tail, for the tail, okay, for example. What did you want to say, Radan?
Maybe because snare 2 had sharper transient.
For example, yeah.
It was more snaky.
Yeah, for example, it has sharper transient. Or your both answers are the same. It's like one of them had a larger body than the other one. And also, remember that our hearing is frequency dependent. Like, if I would put Sirius and I to talk at the same time, you will hear Sirius way louder than me, even though maybe you measure it and it would be the same dB level. Because the voice of Sirius is designed to annoy you. Because babies are designed to get your attention. So look, if I'm going to demonstrate this example with a particular case, so I'm going to just load a snare here, and I know the particular case, the 707, my beloved 707, has a particular type of snare, and let's put here an 808, and let's just grab a snare. Wait, let me just go down here. Peaks at -12, agreed? Wait, peaks a bit louder. I'm gonna change the volume of it, so I guess I can do it here, right? I'm gonna make them peak on the same level. Okay. Which one was louder for you? They're both the same, or? And look at the RMS value. Look at the RMS value of both of them. You see? Why? Because the RMS, let's say the lower the frequencies of something, the higher the reading of the RMS value is going to be. Because lower frequencies develop over time, you see? And it's like, I told you this example of like, let's measure the height of all of us in the room. And let's imagine that, I mean, when you have lower frequencies, what's happening is that, imagine that you're measuring the height of everybody, but there is one height that repeats many times. So it's like, I mean, let's say you are 191, I'm 185, and then there is 10 people with, which is 130. So, well, it's very small people. There's 10 people that is 130. And so this will give me a measurement, like a particular measurement. I mean, I know that that example is really bad. The reason why RMS, why low frequency content is usually more prominent in the RMS is because it's spread out over time longer than a transient that just happens in a moment. So when something carries more low frequency content, it's usually going to read you more in RMS. That's just, it's kind of like, you can see it as also as a measurement of density, like plotnost, I think it's called in Russian, right? Density. So you can pack like more information in the low end, and that's why also something in the low end reads you a higher RMS value. I really know I'm not explaining that so powerfully well. I need to get that thing clear in my head. But the point being is that, I mean, you got the point there, like some things can measure, can read you the same value, but have totally different loudness profiles. Snare 1 peaks at -8 dB. Snare 2 sounds louder, but it also peaks there. So that is why you don't base your mixing decisions only on peak values. Loudness is a term that considers the human brain. Peak does not consider the human brain, by the way. Like, when you're thinking about loudness, you're thinking of the human brain. When you're thinking about peak, you're not thinking of the human brain. So RMS wants to try to get towards a measurement of loudness in a way, or at least to try to give us an idea of how loudness is perceived. There is another case, which is like someone goes around -2 and -3 dBs in RMS, but song 2 sounds louder than song 1's, but it reads a little bit less in RMS. So that can happen sometimes as well, that something sounds louder than the other, but it reads less level of RMS. RMS meters are helpful with mixing, but still RMS is not a perfect measurement of loudness. It's not designed for that. So the point that I'm making here is the same. In the previous one I told you, peak measurement is not good to make decisions. In the second one I told you, RMS is not good for making decisions too. So let's not mix and let's just go home or whatever. Use artificial intelligence plugins or whatever that do the other things for you. No, what I really mean about that is that you need to use them both, or the third option, which is LUFS, which we will discuss later. Why this happens is because of time, I mean the amount of time a signal takes to develop itself, the frequency characteristics, and the math behind the calculation of those, what's the name, of those dBs. So I don't know, I mean, I'm really sure that we have discussed dynamic range very well. I can skip the part of dynamic range. Should I? Or, I mean, if I go and I ask you, do you know what dynamic range is? Like, do you know what it means? I'm not singling you out. I'm just I emphasize on the songwriters a bit because I know that these topics may be a bit more far away to you. Or at least, can you tell me the it's your turn. No, you cannot discuss the dynamic range. Go for it. You want to hear it? Okay, great. So I got some people telling me here, you want to hear it? If you find this boring, guys, just whatever. Just go. There is a nice coffee place down there. No, I mean, but I think it's important to review this. So you have heard this doctrine, okay? Dynamic range is important. Dynamic range, I'm sure you have heard this everywhere. And many people tell you this. Ilya tells you this. All the teachers tells you this. Dynamic range is important. So let's start with the question. What is dynamic range? I guess that some of you know this. Can you answer that question? Don't worry. I don't mean to push any of you. I just like kind of trying to engage you a bit. Like, can you describe what dynamic range is? Correct, but that's what Google Translate does. Sorry to troll you. Or Anne. It's the difference between loudest and quietest sound. So we discussed already that in sound, everything is about a relationship between two values. So obviously, the relationship between the quietest thing and the loudest thing is going to be meaningful to us. So there is a reason why the dynamic range conversation is important. And I'm going to start with that before I go anywhere else. And I call this the expressive actor metaphor. Maybe you may remember this. I'm sure that I mentioned it before. So imagine that what's the name? Fyodor Bondarchuk is the name of this director. He calls me for an audition for a movie, you know, and I go to the audition, and there is this very loveful, soft, beautiful moment, and I just like screaming all the time, like, I love you very much. You are definitely my companion for life. And Fyodor Bondarchuk would be like, okay, thanks, next, you know, because I don't have, as an actor, a dynamic range. Like, I'm just going there, and I don't have a soft, and I don't have a hard. And that reduces my expressivity, my expression as a performer, you know. So when you are creating music, the dynamic range of something can be seen from 2 points of view. Music theory, fortissimo, pianissimo, and audio engineering measured in decibels. You know, let's say fortissimo was, let's think about it from the DVFS scale. And from now on, if you're going to be serious about sound, every time somebody says dB, I mean, if you want to be an asshole, you should do it all the time. Like, what dB are you talking about? Like, I mean, that if you really, and then it's like, and then you can bother everybody because nobody really focuses on these details. But let's talk about it from the DVFS, from the full scale point of view. So maybe I would say something like fortissimo is -1 and pianissimo is -60. So, and then I have a difference between -1 and -60. So my dynamic range is 59 dBs. So it's how much I can travel when I'm listening to that song from the pianissimo to the fortissimo. Now, why is that important? We go back to the metaphor of the actor. You know, your song lacks expressivity if it's like showing this like -1 all the time. And so there is no journey for anybody to go in there. There is only a blast of things coming to you. And one of the things that I have been seeing this lately, and we discussed this, I think, briefly the other day. One of the things that are happening when you're listening to something is that there is a whole bunch of frequencies competing for your attention. It's like, hey, listener, I'm here. Like, I'm 2 kilohertz. Pay attention to me now, please. And there are all these frequencies going on there. And so our attention will be kind of like attracted towards a piece that has a larger dynamic range because our brains are kind of like, yeah. Wow, like what was that difference of loudness? Why did it happen? What does it mean? So if Netflix will treat audio in the way that Spotify does, you know, which is normalizing everything, then all the TV series that you would be listening to would be all like, you know, super loud, and there will be no dynamic moments. So that's a bit of a joke, but anyways. So I remember this slide, and it's not well built. So we have this situation, which is like, I mean, this is a kind of like good way of seeing the conversation of dynamic range, you know. If you see it from the point of view of photography, like the more shades of color you have, these are differences of luminosity in between something very bright and very dark, you know. So in here, I have a very big difference between the shadow of the tree versus the center of the sky. But in here, I have so little difference that, I mean, all I have is just like 1 point of information and 2 points of information. And where I'm getting here with this is like, when you increase the dynamic range, you increase the amount of information available. Because in music, this is fascinating, dude. It's crazy. In music, nothing is individual. Nothing is just alone. Nothing stands alone, ever in sound or in music. And the same is here. Just by adding another point of like loudness or another loudness step, I am increasing the amount of information that something has around. So the dynamic range is the ratio between the largest and smallest values of a changeable quantity. That, by the way, dynamic range also applies to like amount of salt in a solution of water and salt. Like, what's the dynamic range of like I mean the amount of salt increase over time? Like, you can apply this to, it's not only about sound. It actually, the concept of dynamic range in photography is super important. So with sound, the measurement, it's the measurement between the noise floor and the maximum sound pressure level. And guys, it is time for us to talk about something. I mean, if you can grasp this today, you will be 10x more successful in anything you're doing. So everybody needs to go and buy Bitcoin right now. No, I don't mean that. I'm looking for a marker and it seems like I don't have one. And actually I'm gonna make this drawing. In the computer so our online friends can see it, because what I'm gonna tell you now is extremely important. And holy shit, the lecture is about to end. Wow. I'll take I'll take some 10 minutes as usual. Sorry for I guess that sucks, but I also have a lecture afterwards, so we will share a shorter break together. So it's very bad, but anyways. Okay, this is very important what I'm going to tell you, and if you will grasp this today, it would make your life so much easier. I think that the best way I can describe this, I'm thinking, yeah, actually in here is the best way I can describe this. Check this out. I was thinking a lot about this last night when I was mixing. I was mixing something and I was thinking about this. Insert shape. I'm gonna use a couple of squares, okay? So let's say, look at this. I'm gonna insert here. Before I start, I want to try to tell you what I'm trying to tell you. What I'm trying to tell you is how important is to understand what the noise floor means and what are the implications of the noise floor. Okay? So before I go there, I'll tell you, the noise floor is everywhere. Like right now, this room has a noise floor. Do you hear that? So your auditory system of your ears are trying to separate my voice from that thing because you're trying to focus the attention on me, I hope. So, such a self-centered image, right? Like, focus attention on me. So, anyways, there is a like a amount of a noise in this room that you are trying to separate from, so you can hear whatever you want to hear. Now, when an event is recorded, the noise floor is recorded too. I mean, if you put a microphone here right now, that thing is going to go into the microphone as well. That has important implications, and I'll explain you in a moment with a visual image how important this is and how much you really need to be considering this. The second thing that adds into the noise floor is like, let's say that you bought a very shitty Chinese sound card. Who has a very bad sound card here? Like, any of you has a very bad sound card, or you consider it to be a very bad sound card? No? Everybody has good gear? Okay. So have you noticed, like, if you turn up the gain a lot of your preamp in the sound card, you get this like, you know, kind of noise, like almost as if you're watching TV, because the sound card is bad and it's not, and it has bad components inside, and the cables are very close to each other. It's not well isolated. The design is not so good, and so the sound card itself adds noise to the whole thing, because it's just bad electronics. And so then when you record something, you don't only have the noise floor of the room, you have the noise floor of the sound card. Yeah, and that's why sound card is the #1 top choice and top question of what is the gear, a good gear in a studio. When you enter to a studio, the first question has to be, what's the sound card? Look, and that's what I always ask my clients when they tell me, man, and it happens a lot. Man, I got this like Neumann U87, which for me is not impressive. I hate that mic, but my clients think that it's amazing, and they're always like, I record to a Neumann U87 in a Focusrite Scarlett, and I'm like, it's kind of like me saying, like, you know, I have this very amazing water treatment system that cleans all the water. And I grab this glass from the garbage can. There you go. Drink the water. And you're like, what? Like, it's so dirty. Like, so now why this matters so much? Check this out. Okay. I want to insert a line, but I want this line to be dotted. I guess that I can change that here. Yeah. So, okay, let's say that this is 0 dBFS. So I'm going to put here a little 0 dBFS. So let's say that, let me just put it up here because I will need all of this. And let's create 2 cases here. After I finish this, we can go, guys. This is going to be a couple of minutes and we're out. I'm going to just create here case 1 and case 2. So I have case 1 and case 2. This is 0 dBFS, and obviously this is 0 dBFS too. Great. And so now I'm going to make a recording here. Let me insert here another shape here, and let me insert this and do this. and there is a ventilator in the room, or whatever, or you are in some studio and there is some stroika underneath, and so when you're recording something, there is a part of your signal that is this size, that is just remember, this is measured in dBs, right? Like, so this is, I don't know how many decibels, but whatever. There is a part of your signal that is this size, that is the construction noise. And then you have a very shitty sound card, and so you have also sound card noise. And let's color this a bit differently. Okay. And then the signal originally, like, let's imagine that you measure this signal with a SPL meter, like that it's outside of your sound card, isolated, you know, just like the signal itself, you know, the signal itself without it being recorded. Let's say that it was like kind of this size in terms of decibels. So this was your signal without the recording. And then you went and recorded it. So what happens is that you kind of like half of the information available to describe that signal is noise now. And then this is what I want you to pay attention to. And then you go into the DAW and you're like, let's make this louder. So let's put them next to each other. Then you grab this on the DAW and you're like, let's make this louder. And so now, what's the size of the noise floor? It used to be like, I don't know, whatever, 30 dBs, and now it's like twice the amount. And so, whenever you have, imagine that you're mixing and you're like, yeah, my super mix, this is so awesome. And you have a plugin at the end of your chain that it's just making the whole thing louder. You're just turning up the volume of the whole thing, you know. Nice. I'm joking. I'm kidding. I'm fucking around. So if I have such a large noise floor, and then I imagine that I have a plugin at the end of my chain. I do this a lot sometimes, and I'm like, and I know what I'm doing. I'm like, fuck, I'm increasing the noise floor so much, but whatever. I'm tired. I want to go to sleep, and that's it. I'm gonna leave it like that. You know, if you have a plugin at the end of your processing chain that is just making everything louder because you're turning a volume knob up, you're literally just doing this. And you're just increasing the noise floor. And I mean, and what happens if I just told you that in music, everything is about the comparison between two values? Now the listener is like, I hear a noise floor and I hear what you want to tell me. What should I pay attention to? I don't know. I get lost. That's one part of the implications of the noise floor. And the second part of the implications of the noise floor is that one of the things that will determine how loud something sounds is this. This is actually the dynamic range, is the difference between the quietest thing around and the loudest thing around. So whenever you have a larger noise floor, your dynamic range gets reduced very much. Because now the quietest thing is louder, and then the difference between the quietest thing and the louder thing, it's very small. And that has mostly psychoacoustic implications and also technical implications. This is why your mixes don't sound as loud as the mixes that you hear on the radio. Because, or whatever, nobody hears the radio, but that you hear it's like on the gramophone, the mixes that you hear in your home gramophone. Yeah, Diedushka. And this is why, I mean, I just finished yesterday. I mean, there is this client that I've been working on that he sent me these drum BSTs. I mean, it's like rock music with virtual drums. They're not real drums. And last night we finished, and he was super disappointed about the end result. And I mean, when we started, I was like, man, why don't we re-record these drums? No, I think it's gonna be fine. And I told him, we hate to work with VST drums. It's gonna be a piece of shit. I'm telling you. And then we finished, and he was like, this is a piece of shit. And I was like, I told you from the beginning. So, I mean, one of the reasons why professional recording sounds so amazing and why audio equipment is so expensive is because it has a very small low noise floor. So then you can amplify your signals without carrying this crap in the amplification process. So that's why it's so important to consider the noise floor of things and to try to minimize it, you know, every time you say, whatever, it's okay, and you add noise floor, you are reducing the capacity of your mix to become louder, or of your sound that you're trying to do to become louder. So I guess that the last thing, yeah, this is the end of this super recap. There is one thing I wanted to show you that it's, let me just find one slide here that I have in another presentation. I think it's really fascinating. Range, there is like, where am I gonna find this? No, this is not here. Just give me one sec. I think it's gonna be here. It's a really cool, it's a historical, it's a chart that shows historical dynamic range of songs. Oh, look, this is a really good one, and this wasn't like an update. Here it is. Here it is. This is a really good one. I remember I was looking for it last night, and I guess I didn't search properly. Just this one about difference between RMS and peak. I'm gonna put it there. Wait, so let me just bring this here. You see, like, this is a better way of seeing RMS and peak. Here, you see? Like, that's the peak of the signal, and this is the RMS. And the reason why low-end signals carry more RMS content is because they develop over time, longer. Like, a peak just happens in an instant. And so you're trying to measure, make an average. You see, like, I explained it badly, and now I have it more clear. You're trying to make an average. And a transient is something that happens so fast. But that average, the key that you need to understand is that that average is over time. So the transients happen so fast. But the low end of a bass, you know, develops over time. But the transient is like this. And that's why naturally RMS shows you more, like, let's say, lower frequencies become more prominent in the RMS measurements. And the reason why this is closer to the loudness perception of a human is because humans are really not designed to hear like these very fast transients. What human cares to hear is roaring tigers are gonna eat me. Like, that's, and babies, you know. That's we're very, very interesting species. So the last thing I put you here, let me just, and I really invite you to check this out. The last thing that I put you here is, I invite you to check this article, and I really invite you to check it out. Really do. It's a conversation about the loudness war, and I mean, and what it means that people were trying to become louder and louder and louder and louder over time. And this is kind of like a measurement of average loudness of tracks in between the ages, you know. And so we had a peak kind of around 2000, and I guess, I don't know what's the year. I don't know if this is, yeah, this is 2007. So we had a peak kind of like around 2004, something like that. There was a really big change in our industry in the recent years. And I was living kind of around that epoch already. And I'm talking about like in the sound world and thinking about it already. And it was very horrible. Because people were not aware of, I mean, when digital audio started, there were a lot of things that people were really not aware. It was such a new technology. It is still such a new technology that, for example, that thing I told you during this lecture about the relationship between analog audio and sound cards. You know what was happening a lot? That engineers in the US and in the UK and stuff, when they started jumping in between studios, like, I recorded these drums in New York, and then I went to LA to record in another studio, but the calibration of both studios were different. And so maybe they recorded in LA at a certain level, and in New York, when they went to record, everything was sounding so quiet because there was not a good calibration between the sound card and the analog gear. And there is this guy, Fab Dupont, which we will study a little bit soon. He's really amazing producer. And he calls this like he's French. He's like the awful sound of the 2000s. It's the awful sound of the 2000s. It's about this relationship between the analog and digital. So this is a really good way of representing the dynamic range and the difference. Like, this is kind of like an image of London Bridge, of Tower Bridge in London, and you see, like, this image has contrast. But in here, kind of like, think about the dynamic range like this. Imagine pixels, right? And you have like a pixel that is black and a pixel that is white. So there's a big jump in between the luminosity between those two pixels. Yeah? You got it? Yeah? So, okay, so imagine, now I have an image that has only black and white pixels. So, I mean, there is this kind of like binary, you know, competition for my attention. It's like either a lot of luminosity or nothing. And now each pixel in an image is competing for your attention. It's like, hey, I'm green, like look at me. Hey, I'm gray, look at me. So in here, you have some pixels that are not competing for your attention because they are dark. You know, they're kind of like more shy away, hidden away from view, and they don't want to be the center of your attention. They want you to focus on something else. And that's why you focus on something, because it is illuminated. You look at this image and you're not trying to kind of look at what's happening in this corner because it's not illuminated and you don't care about what's not illuminated, or you don't focus. But here, every pixel of this image is competing for your attention. This one is, I mean, I understand that you look at this image and you still look at the bridge more carefully, but that article that I put up there, I really recommend you to read it. It's the source of this discussion. It's kind of like arguing like, hey man, like you see, like one of the problems with modern mixes is that everything is competing for your attention all the time, and then it's really hard to sort of like just like focus on anything. And in my opinion, as a little static that is starting to be a little static, little by little, that's one of the problems of our time. You know, everything is competing for your attention very loudly. You know, Reclama, VK, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, like everything is just like, come here, give me your attention. And that's one of the things that luckily is changing over time with the understanding of what are the implications of digital audio. So, great, that's where we stop for today. I hope it was useful, and next week we will start understanding a little bit more about, we will continue this discussion and introduce the topic of ear training by Mike Senior. No, I forgot the name, but whatever, the author that we're going to study. But anyways, thanks. That was it. Every time I get to these lectures, I'm like, it happens to me the same with lectures and with recording sessions. It's like, what the fuck am I going to do in 1.5 hours with people listening to me? Like, it's impossible to fill up this time. And then when I finish, I'm like, wow, like, it was done. It was done. Yeah, the same happens with recording sessions. I'm like, 6 hours drum recording. Of course, we will be ready. Like, we're going to have extra time. You will see. And then we're always like, fuck, we need more time. So thanks, and have a great day.